talk, we all win. SmackDown, here comes the pain.
Booyaka, booyaka, 619. Let's go, baby. Today on Retro Rebound, we're going back, ladies and gentlemen, to one of the GOATs that I've never played before. Most disliked review here on the channel is my AEW review because I was like, yo, I didn't like it. I didn't think it was good at all. And it was not reminiscent of the wrestling games I loved growing up. For me, like, I love SmackDown versus Raw 07 and games like this, what we're talking about today. And I was hoping AEW would be more of that return to form. It was not. And when so many people were going against me, the very fans of the product I love so much were against me, I thought, okay, well, let me just go ahead, go back to these WWE games and check myself in a moment of pure honesty and transparency. Am I remembering them wrong? Well, ladies and gentlemen, if I could just, oh God, okay. Let me tell you what, this game is fantastic. We're gonna go through all of it here in today's video. So if you're new here and you're into retrospective and nostalgic content, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. We've been holding off on doing wrestling videos for a long time, but I just had a personal desire. I had to do this. If you want to see more, let me know down below what wrestling games you'd like me to check out. All right, so we got a complete box copy of SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain for PlayStation 2. Let's check out the back of the box where it says, watch your back. That's AEW fans to me after what I had to say about the game, but I digress. They continue on talking about a season mode featuring comprehensive statistics, dynamic storylines, and superstar attribute building. There are legends in the game like Sergeant Slaughter, the $1 Million Man, an enhanced grappling system, and new match types, including bra and panty matches. Look, YouTube, if you could just like, I'm paying for a house. If you could just keep the monetization on this one, it's just like an exception. I appreciate, just pretend you didn't see that, okay? All right, so on the inside here, we got the disc, we got the manual. Unfortunately, the manual's not illustrated, but it's jam-packed with information on the game's controls. Naturally, it would be, but there's so many that it's gonna make your head spin on how dense this game is, especially with the match types. Like, y'all, if you've not played this game, go out and buy it. And WWE, if you're watching this, consider a remaster. Like, this game is amazing, but there's some stuff in here, like the bra and panty match, that I feel wouldn't fly with today's WWE crowd, so to say. So let's take a look at this manual for the time being. So flipping it on open, it gets right into, if I can flip the page for God's sakes, it gets right into the game's controls. Look at that, 2 pages worth of controls, from running to grapples, types of grapples like power, submission, signature, quick grapples, counter strikes, taunting, your counter SmackDown moves, your second finishers, your Irish whips, striking attacks. Oh my gosh, there's so many. What you do with the opponent on the mat, how you pin them, how you break your own pin, how you use upper body grapple attacks when they're on the ground, lower body, lifting the opponent. Look, there's even more. Striking attacks, turnbuckle, running moves, high flying moves, weapon attacks, tag team attacks, ladder match moves. There's just moves for everything. And there's more. Table match moves, Hell in a Cell match moves, brown panty match moves, special referee moves, elimination chamber moves. There are so many double team moves. There's so many ways to play this game. So when I fired it up, it was like instantly addicting because there were so many ways to approach every single match. You see, one of my, and I don't want to build it solely off the back of the AEW video, but one of my big problems with that game was the Road to the Elite mode. I thought the career mode in that game wasn't fun at all. So what I wanted to do was go back to what we have here in SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain, and see if I was just, again, bugging out a bit. Was I remembering a little too fondly like my SVR 2006 story mode, my season mode on my PSP? Was I remembering that a little too well, or 07? Was I remembering that a little too well? I don't think so at all. Like, right off the rip, one of the coolest things about the season mode here in SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain, is you can edit the roster per division. So you have SmackDown, you have Raw, you can choose who the champions are, you can choose who's a heel, who's a face. You can do so many different things right off the rip. From there, you're gonna go inside the locker room and you can go to like the back parking lot. You can go backstage, you can go to the GM room and you can talk with the GM and request like a title match, as I did as Chris Jericho. It's funny how this works. I was 0-2. I got beat up by, I think, Brock Lesnar in the back room of the arena. He destroyed me. It wasn't even close at all. It's just absolutely wiped the floor with me. Then I lost the next match because the AI in this game is fantastic. It's really competitive. You really got to pay attention and try a lot. So I get destroyed, but I still got the challenge for a title match. That was a little weird, but that was kind of dynamic storylines that were forming there, and more happen as you go week in, week out with the program. So there was a lot of customization off the rip, and it's not just creating your own superstar. Like, one thing that really blew me away here was you could create your own stable, you could customize the existing stables in the game, and you could even create your own animation. So if you wanted to make a character that was highly detailed, that maybe wasn't on the roster, you could do that here on a PS2 game. So you could combine the existing animations and make something really unique. I remember there was a game where, I think it was this game, Jeff Hardy wasn't available, but people made Jeff Hardy and all of his animations based off his in-ring stuff by using like Matt Hardy's animations, editing them, and boom, you had Jeff Hardy. That is so cool. Would I ever use it? No, but the fact that it exists and people have made meaningful use of it is incredible stuff. Continuing on, the manual gets into my favorite part of the game modes. So you have your exhibitions where there are match types: triple threat, fatal four-way, tornado, manager, so you could have manager or no manager modes. They get into things like the main events, where there's 3 stages of hell. You can choose all these different match types: tables, table, ladder, and chairs, last man standing, first blood, hell in a cell, submission, hardcore. You could choose elimination chamber, elimination tag. I mean, there's so many. Iron Man match. And the reason why this is great is because it's not only a plethora of ways to play the game as you'd expect in any wrestling game. What's fantastic about it is how ridiculous some of these fights are. Ladies and gentlemen, I was driving around a forklift as Vince McMahon. I was driving around a motorcycle as Vince McMahon, dragging someone and throwing them into an electrical outlet. I was doing dive bombs off the top of a tractor trailer. You could fight on the SmackDown fist in this game. You could fight backstage and throw someone into the hot showers. You could throw them into the bathroom. You could throw them into a TV set, throw them through a wall. This game is so dynamic. It's insanely impressive that it existed for its time, but it's exactly what I think wrestling games should be. When people say to me, again, I'm sorry, I gotta keep bringing it up, but when people said to me, yo, Matt, like, AEW is supposed to be an arcade game, this is arcadey to me. Like, this is it. The ridiculousness of throwing someone through a wall and then throwing them into a shower and watching the damage rack up versus the kind of competitive nature that a simple one-on-one match can brew. I mean, the game can be whatever you want it to be. And for me, I like my wrestling games to go wild. Like, one of my favorite things about the SVR games when I was a kid was I loved ambushing people backstage. I played the heel all the time, so I'd ambush people backstage and do fights in the parking lot. Like, to me, that was so cool. It's one of my favorite parts about wrestling, and these games let you do it. But like, you can ride vehicles and all sorts of things in these games. In fact, I saw a clip online. You can fly around in a helicopter and like elbow drop someone into a car. The car will explode. Like, this is the wrestling ridiculousness that I live for. Like, that kind of crazy stuff. You know, obviously the cage matches are insane. There's just so many ways to play the game, and it's great because it is that fun pick up and play nature where you can just get into and enjoy the match types and let it be that, or you can get into the thick of it like I did with the season mode. They also break down the superstar select, the entrances, which the entrances have a ton of detail in them, which is really cool. We can't show much of them because they actually use like graphics from WWE that I imagine they'll want to have claimed or taken down. So we're really avoiding the demonetization bot here in this video today, but that speaks to how great it is, because usually these types of videos are so difficult to work around. But I digress. The entrances are great, full of personality and animation, and really capture that era well. There's tons of signs in the crowd. You can choose what signs are hung up for your character when you create them, which I thought was a cool little detail. So it shows to you like what people in the crowd are there for you. Obviously, the roster of any wrestling game is fantastic, and to me, like, this era up until about like 2008 was one of my favorite stretches of wrestling, when I finally, you know, my parents let me start watching it, you know, with all the cursing and the middle fingers. It's funny, that's like my whole energy today, but they wouldn't let me as a kid, so I had to wait my turn. A little bit after the Attitude Era, I started to get into it, and every Friday night, SmackDown was my thing after school, man. I could not wait. And this was like the era where you had the mix of the Attitude Era talent, but then you also had like the newcomers. I mean, of course, my favorite, if you couldn't tell, Rey Mysterio. This is the mask I got from the WWE shop. You could actually tell here on the inside, I have the sticker. I'll show the overhead camera. You can see I have the WWE sticker. It's an official product. Like, I bought it for SummerSlam, which I went to as a kid, and he's just been my favorite ever since. And still to this day, like, anytime Ray does something, I tune in. Like, I think this guy is just fantastic. His feud with the Great Khali, to me, was one of my favorites, because this big dude versus this small dude, just such a cool feud to me. I mean, I know there's more iconic ones, but that always sticks out to me, like the little guy punching up, doing the 6-1 on someone like the Great Khali. As a kid, it felt such like an impossible task, that to see him pull it off was amazing. But the roster here is just incredible. Like, there's everyone here. Like, Shawn Michaels is here, Triple H is here. You just got everyone from top to bottom. So when you have that mix of nostalgia and classic faces, you got younger Chris Jericho here, because Chris Jericho, for example, is in AEW, but you have like younger Chris Jericho here at the same time as all these other stars. It's like, wow, this really was such a special era. It's not just a thing in my head I just remember fondly, and it was the zeitgeist. Like, no, this was important, just such an incredible set of talent there. And, kudos to management. Like, what I've learned watching AEW, following All Out, is a big part of management is managing egos. And there's a lot of guys in the business for WWE that had every right to have an ego with how much attention they drew to the product. And boy golly, to balance all of that and still make all these talent work together and muscle out that ego to the best of their ability. Props to them. I'm sure that was tough. That's off topic from the game itself. So wrapping up this manual, simple things: pausing the game, creating an appearance. We talked about creating moves. You can actually do that. Move sets, which again, just animations, stables. We talked about that. Saving, loading, and then the credits. And back here, they're promoting other THQ games. So we get things, Ric Flair, woo! Love that. But also, you get big mother truckers. You got the toys for WWE. I used to have these. I remember when I got my first ring as a kid. So cool. I still have my Rey Mysterio action figure. It's the only thing I saved from that time. I don't know where the rest of them went, but I must have donated them or something. But they have the toys here. And then they have Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy, and that's it. And then in the back here, you have MX Unleashed. And I remember it says coming January 2004. MX versus ATV was a game I loved as a kid. I played so much of that. I got it for my birthday from my uncle, and I thought it was fantastic. But that is a complete in-box copy of SmackDown. Here Comes the Pain. This may be nostalgia talking, but I'm a fan of the way damage is doled out in this game. I like that if you target a certain area in these games, that it'll gradually cripple that part of the body and they'll slowly get up. So it's I know a lot of people really like the AEW No Mercy style approach of like momentum, so you can always get back in the match. But what I like about these types of games is, like, if you target the head a lot, when you hit them in the head enough, they'll bleed. But in something like AEW, the way it worked, and I wasn't crazy about it, was if I were to hit someone in the leg 1,000,001 times, eventually their head would crack open. And I know, stop your Jon Moxley jokes before you drop it. I know, guys, bleeds all the time. I personally don't mind it, but a lot of people I think are just sticklers over it because they're like, oh my God, the blood loses value. I'm like, it's his thing, man. He loves violence. That's what he's about. But hold your Jon Moxley jokes, for God's sakes. Point being is, I like that when you target a body part in this game, it starts to become less useful, and it starts to affect like how long you're down for the pin, how long you take to get up, no matter how much you mash buttons. There's nothing more vulnerable feeling than when you've got beat up by the AI enough where you see the full red and you're just mashing buttons to get up and your character's just laying there. It's a horrible feeling. You're like, man, I'm gonna lose if he pins me. I gotta get up. But yeah, the fact that the AI is a threat in this game is great. I talked about that earlier. The match types, everything's here. Everything's here. I don't need to say anymore. This game is a peak wrestling game. I'm truly impressed, and I wish I got to it earlier. I know why I couldn't. Thank you, mother and father dearest, for that. But now I'm right and wrong here, and I'm going back and I'm enjoying these wrestling games. Now I got into it a little bit late, but it's not like the later games were bad either. But this game is something else. So shout out to SmackDown. Here Comes the Pain. I hope they find a way to remaster it, but there's just some things in this game that I don't think would fly with modern audiences. But I digress. Definitely a great product of its time, and one of those few games that there's some I pick up and I play for a little bit. I'm like, I don't know if I'll end up going back to that. Good to have it in the collection. This is one that will get fired up often. Like, it was such a treat to go back to. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's everything I had to say on SmackDown. Here Comes the Pain, in a more random, impromptu wrestling video. Again, if there's other wrestling games you want me to talk about at some point in time, we'll add it to the list. as Jericho would say. You just made the list. So let me know. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.